It may look like a postcard, but there is a state of emergency in the town of Gravenhurst after a massive snowfall over the weekend. It forced road closures, and there's been a push today to get the major highways reopened. Good afternoon. Gravenhurst has been ground zero for the storm. It left many people stranded in their vehicles and transport trucks.
More than a meter of snow has fallen, and area residents are in for a lot of digging now that the snowfall has eased. CTV's Raheem Ladani is following this story and joins us live. Raheem.
Sean and Michelle, this continues to be a full-fledged cleanup operation right across northern Ontario. The latest from Ontario Provincial Police is they expect to have a portion of Highway 11 open this hour, while a full reopening won't happen until later this afternoon.
We have received 3 feet of snow in the last 36 hours.
Cottage country's first winter wallop has left highways deserted, residents digging out, and communities cut off. The town of Gravenhurst still under a state of emergency.
This is by no means normal. This is the most snow I've ever seen. I've been up here for 26, 27 years now, and I've never experienced anything like this in such a short period of time.
Unofficial snow totals show 140 centimetres, or 4.5 feet of snow, has fallen in that Muskoka district. Bracebridge has received 125 centimetres, or just over 4 feet, prompting officials there to declare a significant snow event.
It looks like we're in good shape for the next 24 hours, so that'll allow us to play catch-up. We still don't have sidewalks cleared. That's going to be a challenge for us, of course.
The blast of winter forcing a stretch of Highway 11 from Orillia to Huntsville to be shut down. One man who was transporting horses was stuck in his trailer for more than 30 hours.
When it goes into the 24, 30-hour mark, you start to worry a little bit about the water for the horses for sure. That gets a little stressful.
He, along with hundreds of other stranded vehicles, were rescued by the OPP. Police say everyone who was stuck has been brought to safety. The priority now shifting to removing all of the snow.
I'm told by people and crews that are there, there's 5, 6, 7 feet of snow. Ice has been packed down. They are putting down salt as well to try to melt some of the ice pack.
Ontario's Premier Doug Ford says his government is aware of the situation, posting on social media. Provincial resources are on hand and more are en route to help where needed. I'm relieved that there are no injuries or fatalities reported. Paramedics are checking in on the elderly and vulnerable people. Shifting winds have provided some relief to hard-hit communities, but also pushing potential snow squalls to other regions. To give you a greater sense of how involved this operation is, the Ministry of Transportation has brought in snow-blowing equipment from Pearson International Airport to help with the cleanup. Reporting live, I'm Raheem Ladani. Michelle, I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, Raheem. And we are going to get to the cleanup in just a few minutes. But first, let's take a look here in the city this afternoon. It's looking quite green. We've got the sunshine. Really, for us, just frost in our neck of the woods. Enough that you might have had to get out the scraper to scrape off your vehicle. Jess Smith is here with a look at the current conditions. And nothing for us like up north, but might that be coming?
It is on the way. That lake effect snow machine can be fierce, right? And we saw that come into play over the weekend for those communities. And again, Gravenhurst saw 140 centimetres, through Sault Ste. Marie 105, Bracebridge 125. That is not an insignificant amount of snow. When these watches and warnings come up, especially for snow squalls, take heed because they can be really serious and they definitely impact your drive. Still prompting a number of snow squall watches and warnings and winter travel advisories in those communities, but we do get a break heading into the day today and then more so into the day tomorrow. But still watching for some lake effect snow as we head throughout the day. Toronto, again, the GTA, for the most part, staying relatively clear of a lot of this, at least for today, but things are likely to change midweek. Temperature-wise right now sitting at -1. It feels like -4, and that wind chill isn't as wicked as it was this morning, but it's still very much a thing. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long-range forecast, and we'll talk about the snow we're likely to see as we head into the middle of the week here in the GTA. But right now, it's back to Michelle.
Thank you, Jess. And still to come on CTV News at noon, U.S. President Joe Biden spares his son Hunter the possibility of prison time with a pardon.
We're hearing today that food banks are being forced to cut back on the amount of food distributed due to a lack of resources.
The challenge is being highlighted in a new study showing the huge demand for support. CTV's Mike Walker is covering this story, and he joins us live with the specifics. Mike.
Well, Michelle, Sean, for some time now, we've been hearing that 1 in 10 Torontonians rely on food banks. And this new report from Feed Ontario shows that food banks right across the province have seen a double-digit increase. And food banks say the support they receive is not keeping pace with the record-setting demand. Now, the Daily Bread Food Bank averages about 350,000 visits each month. That record high demand is forcing the Daily Bread to scale back the amount of food it provides each visit by 10%. According to the Feed Ontario report, 40% of food banks in the province have scaled back the food they hand out. The report also found that 1 million Ontarians access food banks between April 2023 and March of this year. They say that's a 25% increase from the year before. The report also found that 1 in 4 food bank users over the past year are employed, with 42% reporting they earn minimum wage or less. Here's more from the CEO of the Daily Bread Food Bank.
We will begin, regrettably, reducing food in January by about 10% to food bank clients, and that number will decline again in 2025 unless we enact policies that reduce food insecurity across the country. I think what is going to happen is when individuals go to one of the Daily Bread food banks across the city, they're going to see 10% less food. They normally would get 3 days worth of food. It's going to be 2.7 days worth of food. It's a 10% reduction, and it means that that individuals are receiving one less meal that they need.
Now, some of the policies food banks continue to urge for include more investments in affordable housing and improvements to the Ontario Works and Ontario Disability Support Programs. Reporting live, I'm Mike Walker. Sean, back to you.
Thanks, Mike. Well, the Prime Minister's meeting with Donald Trump last Friday could be fodder for debate on Parliament Hill today.
Canada's ambassador to the U.S. was at the meeting and has provided some additional details about just what was discussed. Justin Trudeau had dinner with Trump at his Mar-a-Lago estate and a meeting with the U.S. president-elect called very productive. Kirsten Hillman says she thinks the PM was successful in an effort to convince Trump that lumping Canada in with Mexico over the flood of drugs and migrants into the United States is unfair. Trump has threatened to impose tariffs on all imports from Canada and Mexico unless the countries tighten security at their borders. As CTV's Jeremy Charon reports, the Prime Minister is facing calls to act.
A Sunday morning call from Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to strengthen Canada's border.
I'm demanding that the Trudeau government quickly present a Canada First plan to Parliament.
The leader of the official opposition proposing a list of measures including increased patrols, working with provincial law enforcement, and tech to crack down on illegal drug trafficking. He also said Canada should tighten its visa rules and cap the number of asylum seekers.
To fund a bolstered border, the Prime Minister should cut high-priced CBSA consultants and cancel the $6 billion of insulting inflationary spending, the 2-month tax trick, and the inflationary checks.
Those calls come on the heels of Trudeau's surprise meeting with Donald Trump on Friday at Mar-a-Lago to discuss Trump's threat to slap a 25% tariff on Canadian imports unless his border concerns are addressed. While talks were positive, sources tell CTV News Canada has not been given any assurance tariffs can be avoided right now, despite the government promising additional investments at the border.
We have all the assets on the border, we have the technology, so we're going to be very visible so that it's seen that not only we've done the work, but that we can deploy quickly.
Ottawa has faced pressure from provinces, too, to strengthen the border. But premiers have also pushed the Prime Minister on another Trump priority, defense spending.
He was surprised that we had so much interest in it.
Speaking with Vashi Kapelos on CTV's Question Period in an exclusive interview, Ontario Premier Doug Ford said provincial leaders are united in pushing Canada to meet NATO's defense spending target sooner.
That's the next thing President-elect Trump will say. You need to meet your 2% NATO commitments, and he's right.
Ford says the Prime Minister did not commit to accelerating defense spending.
And opposition leader Pierre Poilievre didn't specify either when asked, if elected, how quickly a Conservative government would meet NATO's defense spending target. Jeremy Sharon, CTV News, Ottawa.
U.S. President Joe Biden has pardoned his own son, Hunter Biden, despite pledges that he repeatedly would not. Hunter Biden could have been facing federal prison time for his federal gun and tax convictions. The pardon announced yesterday comes just weeks before Hunter was set to receive his punishment, being convicted in the gun-related case and a guilty plea on the tax charges. President Biden had previously said he would not pardon his son or commute his sentence. It caps a long-running legal saga for the president's son, who publicly disclosed that he was under federal investigation in December of 2020, just a month after Joe Biden's 2020 election victory.
Canada Post says it has presented the union representing striking postal workers with a framework aimed at restarting negotiations.
In places it's going in the right direction, and in other places there's no movement. So we see some movement on pension problems that we had with previous offers, and we see that there's still problems, that there's no fixes for our health and safety demands.
Roughly 55,000 workers have been on strike for more than 2 weeks. The Canadian Union of Postal Workers recently filed an unfair labor practice complaint over the layoffs of striking employees. Meanwhile, the strike has prompted the U.S. Postal Service to make a temporary change. For now, it is no longer accepting mail headed to Canada. Customers are being asked to not mail items addressed to north of the border until further notice.
Now to the Ford government taking its voice from the legislature to the airwaves in the U.S.
A new advertising campaign has been launched. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris has the details.
For generations, this ally to the north has been by your side. Ontario, Canada.
It had been in the works for months, but Ontario is now running this slick ad in the United States, a bit of outreach before Donald Trump returns to the White House.
You can rely on Ontario for energy to power your growing economy and for the critical minerals crucial to new technologies. Ontario is your third largest trading partner and the #1 export destination.
The Premier's office says they're running the campaign where the audience they want to speak to is. On Fox News in prime time, during NFL games, and in Washington airports. There's a plan to expand in the new year to transit shelters and billboards, online in some key states, plus on the Fox Sports app during the Super Bowl. The Premier tells Vashi Kapelos on CTV's Question Period he wants to make clear Trump's tariff threat would hurt Ontario, sure.
But I'll tell you, it would hurt the United States. 9 million Americans wake up every morning making parts to ship up to Ontario alone. And it's just a great partnership.
A partnership the government stresses it wants to continue.
And for generations more, we'll still be here, right by your side.
The government can't say exactly how much these ads will ultimately cost. They're reasoning that the content could change, and so could when they air. But you can count on tens of millions of dollars going into this campaign. At Queen's Park, Siobhan Morris, CTV News.
We're getting word from Durham Regional Police that a 25-year-old Pickering man has been charged with second-degree murder in the death of his mother.
Officers were called to the area of Foxwood Trail and Weyburn Square shortly after 5 a.m. yesterday. Police were called initially about a vehicle collision outside a home. 64-year-old Sheila Hercules was found with significant injuries and rushed to hospital, where she later died. Her son was arrested at the scene. Officers say Sheila Hercules' injuries were not consistent with the crash. The investigation is ongoing. 25-year-old Aiden Hercules is facing a charge of second-degree murder. Ontario's police watchdog is investigating a police-involved shooting on the 401 on Friday.
The incident led to a major closure of the highway, which has prompted complaints about a lack of communication from police. CTV's Hannah Schmidt reports.
It was an unexpected and frustrating commute for hundreds of drivers on Highway 401 in Cambridge after a police investigation closed a significant stretch of the highway for several hours.
My car at that point was below a quarter tank of fuel. And it was freezing cold out. So I was starting to get really stressed about are we going to make it home?
Ontario's police watchdog is now looking into the incident where an officer shot someone during a traffic stop on the 401 Friday evening. The investigation closed the eastbound 401 in the area of Homer Watson Boulevard, leaving many vehicles trapped on the 401 all night.
It's really the first time that I experienced the whole 401 completely closed down. The traffic was backed up for 4 or 5 kilometers. It was just incredible.
The Special Investigations Unit says an officer shot someone during a traffic stop after pulling over a vehicle that someone had reportedly jumped out of earlier as it was moving on Oxford Road 6 before being placed back into it. The OPP caught up with that vehicle along the eastbound 401, and according to the SIU, during that interaction, an officer fired a gun, leaving the 45-year-old driver of the vehicle in hospital with non-life-threatening injuries.
Drivers stranded in gridlock voiced their concerns about the lack of communication from OPP. Many took to social media, questioning why no updates or detours were provided.
I believe that the OPP should try to have like 2 teams when this happened. One team goes to the incident and one team goes to the previous ramp and immediately start redirecting the traffic.
In an email statement to CTV News, an OPP spokesperson acknowledged motorists' frustrations, saying in part, "We posted about the road closure on social media once it was determined that this would be a prolonged situation, and posted once the lanes were reopened." The SIU's investigation is still in its early stages. For now, drivers are calling for better communication to avoid such chaos in the future.
By keeping these people for multiple hours, you're creating another dangerous situation, and I don't think that's a good way to handle it.
Hannah Schmidt, CTV News.
We have a fairly seasonal and sunny start to the week, but that changes as we head into the afternoon as we watch for flare activity to finally really make its way into the GTA and the downtown core. We've already seen it up north, causing a ton of havoc. Different story up here. We're looking at, wrong video here, but we're looking at temperature-wise 2 degrees as we make our way in towards the afternoon. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long-range forecast and what we can expect as we kick off the first full week of December. All that after the break.
We take you live to Muskoka, where some major routes are still closed because of all the snow dumped on them. This is a view live from the Severn Bridge, where traffic is still being kept off Highway 11.
The big question now is, when will the highways in the area reopen? These are major routes in Muskoka and points beyond. And with us to talk about, OPP Sgt. Kerry Schmidt joining us to give us the latest on the road closures. Sergeant Schmidt, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So, what was the situation like at its worst when it came to people being stranded on the highway?
Well, the snow was coming down in waves. It was very localized, massive amounts of accumulation, huge flakes, near zero visibility in many locations. And again, the snow just accumulated. And as vehicles either were in collisions, got stuck, it stopped traffic and prevented the plows from getting through and getting the snow removed. And it just continued to accumulate as traffic continued to pour into that area. And it just turned into a really challenging situation anywhere between Orillia and Huntsville. But the worst area was right in that Gravenhurst stretch on Highway 11. That was over, I guess, on Saturday for the most part through to Sunday. And they've been working on clearing the vehicles that were stranded in that area. Even many of the detours were also blocked as vehicles tried to get around the areas, getting themselves stuck and suspending all other movement of traffic that was trying to get through on areas outside of Highway 11. There is good news on the horizon, and actually we are imminently in the process of reopening Highway 11 northbound from West Street in Orillia, and we do hope to have the southbound lanes also reopened later this afternoon. We have a ton of equipment working diligently and as hard as they can to get that snow cleared and to get traffic moving again.
That's good news that Highway 11 will be opening up. You talked about those vehicles that have been stranded. Are there still vehicles stranded, and how long could it take them to be cleared?
Yeah, most those vehicles have all been removed. Again, all the snow plows, snow blowers, loaders, trucks have been there clearing snow. I was talking to the incident commander that is managing the entire scene, bringing extra resources, including some of those massive snow blowers that are typically used at Pearson Airport and being used up on Highway 11. Other loaders and pieces of equipment that are there to get rid of snowbanks that are 6-7 feet high or higher. We've also got a lot of snowpack accumulation and ice pack that we're waiting for that ice to melt. But again, the conditions have been favorable. The snow streamers are not affecting that area as we speak. And we are in the process now of reopening Highway 11 northbound, or it should be happening imminently.
And other major routes, any other major routes in the area, how long until everything is up and running?
Well, again, you know, if people stay away from the areas and allow all the workers to get in there, that was the challenge over the weekend, as plows could not get through because of the extended traffic. I was up there as well, and I saw plenty of convoys of Hydro One trucks trying to get to scenes, and they're coming in with pickup trucks and utility vehicles and crane trucks to start working on the power remediation as well, and they were challenged as well because of traffic closures and vehicles stuck on the bypass detour routes, which prevented sometimes their access to those locations. So, you know, when we tell people to stay away, we really want people to heed that advice. The sooner we get that area cleared from vehicles, we can get into doing that work, or at least the MTO, the road maintenance crews, and all the heavy equipment operators can get that snow moved and cleared, and then we can get the highway reopened once the conditions are favorable. So it really was a massive team effort to get to where we are right now, and good news is just in front of us now.
And we started to sort of get used to the weather being nice in November. Have you seen anything like this before?
Well, we've seen certainly some massive snowstorms that have blanketed the city, the GTA. You know, this was a very localized event that was dropping significant amounts of snow because of those snow streamers and that moisture that was getting picked up off of Georgian Bay and the Great Lakes and putting it down in a very localized area. And so, you know, this is certainly not without exception, but certainly it's not the way to maybe be initiated as to the first winter storm or winter blast this season. Hopefully people are taking this under advisement to be prepared and plan ahead and understand the limitations of their vehicles. And when Mother Nature comes with this kind of weather, you know, we need to understand that there's not much we can do to prevent that, and we need to wait for that system to pass before we keep going. So, you know, be prepared, make sure your vehicle is prepped. Having that emergency kit, having boots and gloves and jackets and shovels and so on, having your vehicle filled with fuel, because people in many cases were stuck on Highway 11 in the Gravenhurst area for 10, 12 hours or more, which is very challenging.
That's good advice and a bit of a scary scene there. Thank you very much, Sergeant Kerry Schmidt with the OPP, for this update.
Thank you.
Now, this was a view from the CTV News chopper just after sunrise this morning, flying over the Oak Ridges moraine. We've had just a hint of snowfall in the GTA in the last few days, a far cry from Gravenhurst and Muskoka. And it really is a good reminder, because let's just say you were heading up north, you leave Toronto, and oh, wow, there's nothing on the roads, nothing to worry about, and suddenly you hit that Highway 11. And oh, when it's bad weather, that's some of the worst driving I've ever experienced, for sure. And that's why we got to pay attention to the weather forecast.
It is a lot, right? We went from, as you mentioned, a really warm start to the month. So I think this snowfall, although we knew it was coming, caught a lot of people by surprise. And having winter tires, all-season tires, are a good thing. But there just comes a certain point when you shouldn't be on the roads because the weather is just that bad. And lake effect snow like this, as Sergeant Schmidt had mentioned, it is so localized and so focused, and the rate of snowfall is just so fast that it's really hard to keep up. So you have to pay attention to those watches and warnings. Weather is brought to you by the Presler Law Firm. Injury lawyers you don't pay unless they win. Now, a different story this morning. It's relatively quiet, really right across the province. Still some light flurries further north, but for the GTA, we're seeing peaks of sunshine, that little hint of sun helping to keep us kind of around that seasonal mark, but things are going to get cooler as we head throughout the day, and we have a wind chill to contend with. Right now, we're sitting at 2 here in the city. It feels like -2 further north. They're around -3 through North Bay, feeling like -7. Everybody, for the most part, kind of heading towards a fairly seasonal day. Temperature-wise, we don't see much change here in the GTA. We warm up a little the further north you go. We're kind of hovering around that freezing mark, so that will help with a little bit of the melting up there. But the ice has to, or sorry, the salt has to do what it has to do, and they have to continue working to clear all of that snow. Tonight, we drop down to -3. It'll feel like -6, but we're getting into those wind chills that are into the double digits. Really challenging, especially if you work overnight. And it is going to remain cool as we head right throughout the week. We've seen those streamers off of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. That's what caused all of that catastrophic snow a little further north. Gravenhurst, obviously, for example, getting almost the worst of it, looking at about 140 centimetres over the span of a couple of days. Still looking at some watches and warnings when it comes to those snow squalls. So areas through Barrie, Owen Sound, Godridge, London. They're still likely to see those streamers as we head into the day tomorrow. So we're not done with the snow up there just yet, but there is a break coming, at least as we head in towards kind of our midpoint on Tuesday. The bulk of the snow today is from this streamer. So this line right here, that dotted line, that's a trough. That's just kind of an extension off of that main low that is far, far east of us, but we're still dealing with it as it makes its way down across the Great Lakes once again, and then kind of just sits stalled north of the city. Timing everything out, for the downtown core, the GTA, over the weekend, you saw a few flurries of light dusting. We don't really get likely our first noticeable snowfall event until we get in towards that midpoint of the week. And even that, nothing compared to what they saw a little further north. We're looking at this afternoon, a little more cloud cover rolling in, that line of snow kind of making its way from Lake Huron all the way across, and the same from Georgian Bay through to about Aurora. As we head in towards our evening, there's really no change. Those communities that are typically impacted along those eastern shorelines of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay don't really get too much of a break until we get into our Tuesday. A little sunshine here in the city, a cold, but for the most part, really beautiful day here in the city of Toronto and across the GTA. We watch for another round of snow to make its way through. Again, the kind of northeastern shoreline of Georgian Bay getting it once again as we head into our Tuesday evening. For the GTA, for the downtown core, it is likely we get a dose of it Wednesday morning. We're talking maybe a centimetre. This isn't a lot, but that first snowfall always does something when people see it, especially if you're driving along any of the 400 series highways. As we head into our Wednesday afternoon, we get a bit of a break. Another round of snow comes just in time for that commute home for a lot of people. So plan ahead and give yourself that extra time. If you don't have your winter tires on yet, take your time or take transit if you can, if you're heading out Wednesday evening. And then we see that kind of continue into our Thursday. So very seasonal. Today, tomorrow, we're holding on to a decent amount of sunshine and a fairly moderate wind. It's really Tuesday night into Wednesday that we watch for flurries to make their way through. We're looking at periods of snow in the morning and in the evening on Wednesday. A little bit chillier. We're still kind of hovering around a seasonal-ish kind of mark. We head into Thursday. A lot of that starts to taper off, and then we get a bit of a break as we head in towards Friday and look through to the weekend. But as we see that cloud cover lift, I say warmth, it's relative, but as that cloud cover lifts, it starts to cool down, and it gets cold through your Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So bundle up if you have outdoor plans. Sean, I'll send things back to you.
Thanks, Jess. Well, the Princess of Wales has shared a letter calling for love, not fear, ahead of the holidays. Kate shared the sentiment in a letter which will be sent to those attending her annual Christmas Carol service at Westminster Abbey. She says the story of the holiday emphasizes the importance of giving and receiving empathy, adding, "Love is the light that can shine bright, even in our darkest times." The Princess's Carol service comes as she takes on more public events following the end of her chemotherapy treatment.
And we continue to monitor the situation in Muskoka. This is a live view from Severn Bridge, where traffic is expected to be allowed onto Highway 11 northbound shortly. We have been told the northbound lanes may reopen in 10 minutes. Some good news for folks trying to travel that way. We'll continue to follow this story and others. A quick break. More when we return. Zoos are facing an identity crisis and public pressure to adopt a more ethical approach. Earlier this year, an international conference of zoo professionals in Calgary was pushed to prioritize a move away from entertainment and focus more on conservation.
But is it enough to sway critics who are against animal captivity altogether? CTV's Kamal Karamali reports.
Here at the Toronto Zoo, you can hear the oohs and ahs for the Arctic wolves and see the otters making quite the splash for spectators. What may not be visible behind fences and glass barriers is a monumental shift taking place. From a traditional zoo to one that focuses more
really what you're seeing is the zoos make this jump from place to purpose
on conservation and climate change. Take the Amur tiger, for example.
You have a species that there's less than 400 of them left in the wild.
Now focusing on breeding more of them.
We're dreaming of a better future for species like Amur tigers.
While Amur tigers will remain at the zoo, some species are now being bred specifically so they can be released. Blanding's turtles, one of several species here at the Toronto Zoo facing extinction, being bred so that they could eventually be released. These little guys will be set free in about 2 years. The head of the zoo says right now there are at least 8 species that are rare or endangered being bred here so they can be let go in the wild. But that still leaves hundreds being bred for captivity, and that's where critics take issue.
If they're being bred, then their children and grandchildren will never be released. And I think that's something that the public is less supportive of these days.
Arguing zoos should change their purpose completely and stop breeding animals for display.
They can shift more towards being refuges and conservation breeding centers.
This reproduction lab, not what you typically imagine when thinking of your local zoo, but here you can find embryos and sperm.
We've got some wood bison sperm, we've got some hippo sperm.
For dozens of species. There's a new focus on preserving animals facing extinction today, but scientists here also peering into the future, hoping to save more species.
In the event of a climate crisis, a natural disaster, then we've got the insurance policy, the genetics to bring out and put back into the population.
The zoo argues its commercial side still serves a purpose, connecting the public to animals so people can care about conservation.
A lot of these animals out of sight, out of mind, off the planet.
But admitting, just like these species, over time, they're willing to adapt and evolve. Kamal Karamali, CTV News, Toronto.
Now to a moment captured on camera that you just have to see. It's from a Christmas tree lighting.
A streaking meteor lit up the night sky just as the tree was about to be lit. Well, talk about perfect timing. A shooting star fell straight toward the tree as the crowd counts down, wowing hundreds who were on hand in Fall River for the tree lighting last night. Now, the moment we saw this happening, we had to bring in science and technology specialist Dan Riskin to talk about this. What are the odds of this happening, Dan?
I mean, they say that there are about 25 million asteroids that come into the Earth's atmosphere every day. It's just you can't see most of them because it's either daytime or they're very, very faint. But yeah, this is just a spectacular sort of one-off. If you think of all the Christmas tree lightings and all the cameras looking at them all around the world, we're certainly ready to see this. But it's really fun when something like this happens, where Mother Nature really steals the show.
Now, speaking of space, let's talk about NASA's mission to the moon. We've been waiting for a launch date for Artemis 2, which will take Canadian astronaut Jeremy Hansen around the moon. What's the latest there?
Yeah, well, the latest is we've been waiting sort of to hear the sort of fallout from Artemis 1. That mission, without anyone on board, went around the moon, came back, splashed in the ocean, and there was damage to the heat shield that wasn't anticipated. It came off in chunks when it wasn't supposed to come off that way. And NASA has been sort of tight-lipped about what the issue was and trying to explain it. NASA has not yet said what they believe the issue is, but they've said they've figured out what they believe the issue is. They just won't tell us their answer. And now we hear news that they have started stacking the rockets, which is the sort of beginning of the preparation for sending Artemis 2 up to space. So the people that watch this are saying it looks like NASA's optimistic. They've figured out what the heat shield issue is, even though they have not made an announcement to the public about what they believe the answer to that problem is, because this stacking should have us doing a launch either very late next year, 2025, or early 2026. So we'll see what happens, but it's looking good.
Looking good, patience on the timeline. Now, you also brought us a story about AI systems designed to make big trucks safer, but instead of pointing out down the road, the cameras are actually focused on the driver. Can you explain that?
Yeah, this is a suite of new technologies where artificial intelligence, ultimately the job is to make the roads safer. But one of the things that can happen, especially with big rigs on the road, is people that drive when they're too tired to drive. And with AI systems, you can have a camera that pays attention to how much you're blinking. Are you rubbing your eyes? Is your head tilting down a little bit? Are you yawning? What have you been acting differently in the last half an hour compared to the way you were for the first 7 hours of this drive? And that kind of technology can alert the driver and say, hey, it looks like you're drowsy. Maybe you need to take a break. And if the person chooses to ignore that advice, the technology can also call the boss and say, hey, listen, you've got a driver in truck number 452 who we've been warning about drowsiness for the last half hour, and they're staying on the road. You might want to reach out to them. So this kind of technology is exciting in terms of improving safety, but of course it brings up a lot of privacy concerns for the truck drivers. And of course, if this were rolled out to other vehicles, like the ones you and I drive, Maybe, would that be accepted by people who want that kind of technology, or would they feel like that invades their privacy too much?
Seems like a lot of questions to be answered there. CTV's science and technology specialist, Dan Riskin, joining us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
From science to entertainment, Disney's animated musical Moana 2 is making history as the highest grossing U.S. Thanksgiving release of all time. The sequel sailed to an estimated $221 million U.S. debut. Moana 2, along with Wicked and Gladiator 2, drew a tidal wave of moviegoers over the holiday weekend, all three bringing in a combined $420 million U.S. for a record-breaking Thanksgiving Day box office weekend.
Still to come, the announcement of job cuts at Shopify takes its toll on its share price. That coming up in business.
Get Toronto's top stories, breaking news alerts, and watch live. Download the CTV News app.
Toronto stocks slipped in early trading after closing at a record high on Friday.
Andrew Bell of BNN Bloomberg brings us the latest in business news.
Hello there. Here are your business headlines. Toronto's benchmark stock index slipped this morning from Friday's record high close. Heavily weighted Shopify was down 5% after the online retail giant announced job cuts. There was no update on the possible sale of the company. In the U.S., stocks hit a record high with the S&P 500 index topping 6,400. Lululemon climbed 5% as investors await quarterly results on Thursday. Intel Chief Executive Pat Gelsinger has been forced out after the board lost confidence in his plans to turn around the chip maker. The stock is down more than 50% this year. Intel's attempts to break into the artificial intelligence market with new products have yet to take off. And finally, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump is warning countries around the world to stay anchored to a U.S. dollar-based financial system or face massive tariffs. But some market watchers say it's a tactic that could backfire. The strategy, quote, isn't a good look, said Brad Setzer, a former U.S. Treasury official under Barack Obama. He argues that it, quote, suggests a lack of confidence in the dollar. That's the latest in business. I'm Andrew Bell of BNN Bloomberg.
An update on the situation in Muskoka. This is a live view again from Severn Bridge at Canal Road, and we're told the route to the northbound Highway 11 to Gravenhurst has now been reopened. So we'll repeat that again. The route to northbound Highway 11 to Gravenhurst has been reopened. I'm told workers are heading up there to remove the signage as we speak.
Well, a rising tick population has doctors warning Canadians to be on the lookout for symptoms of tick-borne illness.
Mild weather has proven to be a breeding ground and as they thrive and spread dangerous diseases. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth explains.
Ticks and the diseases they spread terrified Donna Lugar, who was diagnosed with Lyme disease 12 years ago.
In bed, not mobile.
It was a constant battle with fatigue and flu-like symptoms.
Light, heat, scents, food. It was a crazy time.
Lugar is now a Lyme disease advocate working to raise awareness. Mild weather in recent winter and autumn seasons has caused an uptick in the tick population in eastern Canada.
We've had a bumper crop of ticks on people, ticks on pets.
When ticks latch onto humans, they can transmit serious illnesses.
Basically, they suck blood from wildlife, and then when they end up on a person or a pet, they're whatever pathogen they might have picked up in the wildlife, they can give to the person or to the pet.
Tick and Lyme disease have been concerns in Canada for a long time, but there has been a considerable increase over the past 12 months.
Relative to last November, we're up between 20 and 30%. The infection prevalence is creeping up in every given location.
Dr. Isaac Bogosh says tick-borne illnesses extend well beyond just Lyme disease.
An infection called anaplasmosis, another infection called babesiosis. Okay, we know that these infections are in Canada. They have been diagnosed here, locally acquired. There's more and more of them.
Lyme disease treatments are effective and prevention is crucial.
It's really important to do tick checks, right? And that means checking your body for ticks.
There is optimism within the medical community. Several clinical trials are underway, with a new Lyme disease vaccine potentially coming soon. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Halifax.
YouTube has released its top trends for the past year. In Canada, the Olympics, the U.S. presidential election, and the summer blockbuster Deadpool and Wolverine were among the top trending topics. For more on what was popular on the video sharing platform this year, we're joined live by Zaytoun Murji, Head of Communications with YouTube Canada. Zaytoun, YouTube, wow, what a window into the world of what Canadians are interested in. What was the top trend in your estimation?
Yes. So our year on YouTube is the annual celebration of the cultural moments and creators that Canadians watch through the year. So just as you mentioned, it was a huge year, for example, with the Olympics. We had Canadians coming to the platform to watch all sorts of recaps from the Olympics and also do, little pieces of their own to be part of the experience. We saw a lot of fun creator content of people, my submission to try my hand at joining the Canadian diving team and fun content like that. We also saw Deadpool and Wolverine as a huge, huge cultural moment this year. What's really fun is you'll remember Ryan Reynolds' opening sequence dance to Bye Bye Bye. That resulted in a huge spike in dance challenges on YouTube Shorts. And actually it made Bye Bye Bye, a song from over 15 years ago, come back into the mainstream. They actually updated their song on YouTube to include from motion picture Deadpool and Wolverine, just because they were so excited, I think, to see all the interest back into the song.
Now female pop stars, your team noting also taking center stage.
Yes, it was a very, very big year for female pop stars. We all are very familiar, of course, with everything Taylor Swift this year, but Sabrina Carpenter also had an epic, epic year. She was on the top trending list, and her song Espresso is also on the list of top songs this year. And, she had an incredible year. She performed at Coachella. She actually surprised fans at one of Taylor Swift's shows. And of course, who could forget that incredible Saturday Night Live skit, Domingo, based on her song Espresso as well.
Oh, yes. Before we let you go, real quick, Canadian content creators also making their mark. Who's the top content creator this year?
We are so lucky to have such a strong creator economy here in Canada. And so some of the top creators we've seen this year are Jeannie Weenie, who does sketch comedy, Hafugo, who does fun experiments, the Calagora sisters, who do interesting challenges in gaming. So such a wide array of content and creators that are doing incredibly well on the platform.
We Canadians love to go down the rabbit hole online. Thank you so much, Zaytoun Murji of YouTube Canada. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
An update now on the snowy situation in Muskoka. Look at this. This is very positive. This is a live view of Canal Road, where you go to the northbound stretch of Highway 11 and we see trucks and cars moving again. The area has reopened, which is probably a big relief for a lot of folks looking to commute up there.
Great news after a difficult weekend. Well, most people like to change up their wardrobe once in a while, but a businessman in Vaughan is set to wear the same jacket for 30 days in a row.
It's all part of an effort to raise money for a good cause. CTV's health reporter Pauline Chan explains.
It's a Don Cherry classic. Big print, bright colors, and the team at Spark Financial Group in Vaughan will be looking at it for 30 days straight.
I'm a big believer that we were put on this earth to leave it a better place than we found it.
Each year for the past couple of years, Nick Regina has raised money for charity by wearing a particular piece of clothing for 30 days in a row. And this year the beneficiary is Waves of Changes for Autism.
We help families financially to offset the specialized costs for their therapies, programs, communication devices. Life, with autism is difficult, and we as a group understand that, and we are here to help ease the burden in whatever capacity we can.
Ellen Contardi says the organization is completely volunteer-run, and they're grateful for Spark's support.
The costs are extremely high. you know, ABA therapy, IBI therapy, occupational therapy. You're looking at hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
Regina almost wasn't able to carry out his jacket campaign this year.
We bought another one because my car got stolen the day before the campaign was going to happen, and this was in the back of the car. So to stay integral to the campaign, Johnny came all the way down from Alliston and got one that looked very similar.
The 30 days is up as of December 6th, so there are just a few days left to donate.
They have a link that you can go on to, which I think was on the back of Nick's blazer, so they can scan that or just go on Spark Charity Foundation and they can donate from there.
And just a few days left for the Spark staff and Regina's family to see him in the same festive wardrobe. Pauline Chan, CTV News.
Now, we saw a lot of snow north of the city. Right here, you know, it's pretty nice. It's pretty sunny. It's December, but that's what you get.
I know, right? Finally, it's December, and it's starting to look a little bit more like December. Obviously, Northern Ontario saw a ton of snow. Different story for us here. We saw light dusting, but we are looking at our probably first, I'm not going to call it a major snow event, just a snow event as we head in towards our Wednesday. So looking at that lake effect snow off Lake Huron and Georgian Bay, that's not stopping till probably tomorrow. Right now, we're sitting at 2, feeling like -2, and we are holding on at a fairly seasonal point until about Wednesday when the snow comes, and so does the cold.
And that's CTV News at noon. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CP24 and on our website, ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Jessica Smith and the whole team here, have a pleasant afternoon. I'm Michelle Dubé.
And I'm Sean Leathong. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6.